She will be delivering a keynote speech about digital identity and evolving legal landscape, followed by a panel discussion where we will have multiple stakeholders, as I will be having the honor to introduce later, and give them the floor to discuss a very cherished topic to my heart. As I'm getting nostalgic when talking about this topic, since I have started working on digital identity 20 years ago in this university, Al Akhawin University, where I started as a research assistant in the ICT4D lab. And for 15 years, we've been trying to digitize citizens' records, which represent the heart of digital identity and the heart of all public services in the country and later in the continent. I will give the floor to Madame Gabriella Abraham for her speech. Did you prepare slides? Do you have slides? Okay.
Thank you very much, Huda, for the warm introduction. I'm not a doctor, not just yet. Just a small correction. Thank you. Coming to Morocco, I did not expect to be in this weather. It's very cold, but warm people. Thank you once again. I'll just give you, I sincerely apologize, I don't have a slide, but I'll try to be as engaging as possible. At the finish of this conversation, I will leave you with more questions than answers, because this is an evolving space. We're regulating an emerging technology, digital ID, and there are a lot of changes from time to time when you think about or try to regulate the digital identity space. Let me say a few things about the National ID Program of Ethiopia. NIDP, as we call it, a National ID Program, is reestablished in the Office of the Prime Minister in Ethiopia in 2021. Prior to this program's establishment within the Office of the Prime Minister, there were a lot of efforts to try and build a centralized, secure identity management system within a lot of other sectoral organizations. But due to the comprehensive economic policy within the country, the homegrown economic agenda, the Digital Strategy 2025, it got a very stronghold political backing as well as commitment from the current Prime Minister, and it got established within the Office of the Prime Minister in 2021. After the establishment, we've made a deliberate exercise, a very comprehensive one, to try and build a strong team that would develop the system on the basis of MOSIP, the Modular Open Source Identification Platform. So that's the system we're using to manage the identity of our residents. Our team, internal team, has customized and scaled MOSIP and contextualized it to the context of Ethiopia. So we use this open source platform because of deliberate policy choices, in the sense that we've identified the benefits of using an open source platform, which is customized by an internal team in capacity, which will help us to avoid vendor lock-in, 1, 2, to increase customizability to the context of the country, and 3, it's secure and has proven to be beneficial in the sense that it will allow us to operate within our space by avoiding operating in a black box. So we know what we're doing. We are using local talents, and there's a lot of knowledge transfer that's happening between our team and the team in India that's developing MOSIP. Currently, we have registered 10 million residents, not just citizens, residents. So this is not a citizenship-based ID, but a resident-based ID. So by law, people who are residents in Ethiopia, including refugees, stateless people, expats, are entitled to have the ID. And we aim at 90 million registration within the next 3 years, inshallah. We hope to achieve that with the aim of making sure that access to identity verification at point of service is secure, reliable, and ease of access is facilitated in these different institutions in the private space as well as in the public realm. So we have a comprehensive policy backing. We've developed the system, and we're also trying as much aggressively as possible to integrate with other sectoral or institutional systems. We've so far managed to integrate with 50 institutions in the financial space, telecom space, as well as public institutions providing services. That's a work in progress too. It's not a walk in the park. It requires a lot of consultation, discussion, identifying which sectors have digitized and what modality should we be using in integrating our system with the respective sectoral institutions. Some of the achievements we've done so far could be mentioned here as an example. Our Ministry of Revenue, which manages tax collection, used to collect biometric data just for the purpose of identifying taxpayers. And that was done solely because, not because that's their main mandate, but because they wanted to uniquely identify their customer base. And for lack of a centralized identity management system prior to the establishment of the National ID program, they were forced to collect biometric data, which they don't need. And so once the National ID program is established, we call, by the way, our ID FIDA, which in Arabic and in Ethiopia, many local languages means beneficial. So FIDA has proven to be very beneficial in effect by avoiding duplication of effort, because this is a centralized identity management system, then it can cater to other sectoral needs to issue functional IDs. So that's one of the achievements we've been able to obtain off of FIDA. But we're also replicating this lesson in other sectors, whereby we've integrated with the Civil Service Commission, whereby their human resource system can be developed on the basis of FIDA, avoiding the possibility of people impersonating other people to get benefit, people having multiple accounts and benefiting off of the limited public resources that we have in the country to get invalid support and salary from the government. So again, this is a work in progress and has to have a good trajectory and scale up in the near future as well. Coming back to the topic of the day and a discussion about the evolving legal issues around digital ID, as I mentioned earlier, this is not a dictative conversation, but more of a policy choice to try and analyze what are in these spaces and what exactly did we look into in formulating our or regulating our digital ID system in Ethiopia. We have adopted a comprehensive law, the Ethiopian Digital Identification Proclamation, in 2015. Sorry, that's Ethiopian calendar. In 2023, which is 7 years behind the Gregorian calendar, by the way. So we've adopted a comprehensive law in Ethiopia, and some of the policy backdrops that we looked into while adopting and this law during policy debates, public consultations, can be summarized in some 7 points. The primary one is that having a comprehensive legislation on ID management system that comprehensively addresses the need to provide enabling provisions as well as safeguarding provisions. Back then, we did not have a comprehensive personal data protection proclamation which protects the right of people in the different spaces. So we found ourselves in a position whereby we have to include sector-specific piecemeal legislation when it comes to personal data protection, and we did that exercise within the digital identification within the Ethiopian Digital Identification Proclamation. And so, as much as we give due focus to the enabling provisions in terms of regulating what the ID authority should do, collecting data, issuing credentials, integrating with other sectoral institutions, updating data, and all of that, we also should give due focus to the safeguarding principles of collecting minimal data, making sure that consent is the process, is embedded in the whole process of data collection, storage, and sharing in all aspects. Also, the legislative backdrop should try and incorporate a mechanism whereby privacy is a primacy taught within the development of identity management system. The other point is personal data protection, as embedded within the safeguarding principles, should primarily focus on building trust among us people to the identity management system, and should not be just another provision incorporated just so to make it look like it's part of the process. And so our legal framework in Ethiopia is primarily focused on a consent-based process throughout the process of data collection, storing the data, and sharing the data with other sectoral institutions. But there is also a policy debate around this concept, in the sense that if you make data collection on the basis of consent, but at the same time you're building a very expensive identity management system to try and make it available to other sectors, how can you increase adoption? How can you enhance the adoption of this identity management system? Because there are a lot of people who have other types of IDs which they can effectively use. It may not be as secure, as easily accessible, but still they have it. So there is a need to try and balance this notion of data privacy and security, as well as the policy backdrop behind making this identity management system available, accessible, and is usable for regulatory purposes. The other item is the issue associated with inclusion. So previously, we had a law that regulates national ID, not digital ID, which was mainly focused on a mandatory data collection process whereby people above the age of 18 should get an ID. But now the thought has changed from a security lens to a service lens, whereby there is a transition or evolution to try and make the identity management system, to build an ecosystem around it and make identity part of the service provision rather than identity, looking at identity from a purely security perspective. And so that evolution is very much observable in the transition from national ID to digital ID, which is part of the reason why the ID is a resident-based ID instead of a citizenship or nationality-based ID. The other item is sectoral digitization. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the idea of building an ecosystem around digital identification is much more important than collecting data, because there are sectoral IDs in the different functional institutions who are issuing TIN number, tax identification number, issuing driver's license, issuing academic records. All of this can, in one or another way, be used to verify identity. However, prior to, especially in Ethiopia's context, prior to the FIDA ID, there was not a centralized identity management system which is interoperable with other systems, which is secure, which is biometric backed, and is centralized. So this is primarily very much important to build an ecosystem around the ID, which we're striving to build in the near future as well. The last point, but not the least, is the embedding cybersecurity and personal data protection within the identity system. We need to very much focus on and think about how or avoiding a possibility of data protection and data security is an afterthought, because this will leave us in a very precarious situation when something happens. Imagine being in an office in Estonia, for instance, back in 2013, I think. There was a massive data breach of 700,000 biometric data that happened in Estonia. And imagine you being a leader of that institution and thinking about what went wrong. I'm not suggesting that there was something wrong in that process, but I'm saying embedding data protection, data privacy from the start, during developing all of the features in the modules and all of the systems is very, very important, and this has to be supported by law, by process, as well as by technology throughout the process of identity management. So I'm not saying this should be done or that should be done, but this should be the guiding principle, embedding data protection, embedding data security within the process of identity management, especially for those institutions managing sensitive data such as biometric data is very much crucial in the process of identity management. I'll stop here. Thank you very much, Buddha and team.
Thank you very much, Gabriella, indeed, for this very insightful presentation. I learned a lot about the Ethiopian ID, digital ID. I mean, In the same topic, I'm pleased to call to the stage honorable speakers from different perspectives, giving their opinion from different perspectives. And I will start by calling Mr. Tariq Fadli, CEO of La Marocaine des e-Services, Morocco. He was behind the initiative e-Muqata'a that is now named Waraqi to digitize public services. Dr. Clarisse Harbon, she is our lawyer, and she will bring the legal policy, but also gender perspective of digital identity. I'll call to the floor as well, or to the stage, Mr. Sharaf Din Nasseri, CTO of Defendis. Sorry for the spelling mistake, it's Defendis, not Defendis. My fault. He will bring the cybersecurity and security aspect. And Dr. Raifa Aqawi, our great researcher and professor at Al-Akhawain University and expert of blockchain technologies. And finally, last but not least, Mr. Ismail Iraqi Husseini, he's the representative of la CNDP. Okay, I did not know that. Nice to meet you.
And a cousin.
Yeah, I know. This I knew it. This is something can you comment?
I think I don't need a presentation.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to participate to this discussion, especially that digital identity represents the heart of any digital transformation effort in the country, not only in the country, but also in the continent. I would like first to ask each one of you to introduce yourself, what you do, and how this topic relates to your interests and your work. We'll start from right to...
Hello there. My name is Sharaf Din Nasseri. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Defendis. I've been working in cybersecurity for 8 years now. So I had 6 years doing the hacking part and 3 years doing the defending part. So I have decent knowledge about what's going on in the good side and the bad side of cybersecurity. And yeah, that's basically me. Thank you.
So I'm in the profession that might defend you in court for hacking, depending, whether it's legal or not. But in Morocco, I always call it hacking. My name is Clarisse. I'm an associate professor here at AUI. I teach, amongst other things, I am many other things, not only my profession, but amongst other things in my profession, I do international law. So the questions of cyber and borders and space, not just outer space, but space, is extremely relevant for my work from a perspective of privacy, human rights, women's rights, and so forth. So thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tariq Fadli. I'm managing 2 companies. The first one was a startup 18 years ago. It's called Algo Consulting. My co-founder is an alumni of Akhawain. So Algo is behind many systems in Morocco. We touch the lives of millions of people. When you take the train, when you listen to the radio, when you pay taxes, when you do some bank transactions. We also put the COVID system. Morocco was one of the first countries on this planet to digitally manage COVID within 3 weeks of the confinement. We were behind that. And the second company is a startup. It's called La Marocaine des e-Services. And it's the one that swore to disrupt Muqata'a and legalization. So we launched an app called Waraqi that will free Moroccans from going to these 2,400 offices that will be closing soon. And by 2030, we wish that the app will be a unique portal for all paperwork from the mobile app. It's a big dream, but we're getting there. We're on pre-launch. You can check it out. It's working, and it's totally legal. It took us 10 years, 2 laws that we're adding to our TV. So, thank you. I'm sorry, and digital identity is at the heart of Waraki. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Aifa. I'm an assistant professor at AUI, and I hold a PhD degree in information and communication engineering, where basically in my thesis, the work that I did focused on the aspect of sharing health records, because mainly one of the concerns that were actually found is that you find like hospitals managing those records in kind of like silos, and the idea was kind of like bringing all of those together and also giving patients the ownership of their records. And I kind of like did that by leveraging blockchain as a technology. And I continued using the technology eventually as part of my postdoc at TU Delft. And for another application that was basically mostly for smart grids, which is totally unrelated to healthcare, but that was kind of like exciting to work on because again, it's related to cybersecurity from the perspective of again, either managing the firmware updates, maybe the data that is actually exchanged. So the way that I would say that work is perhaps related to the topic that we are discussing today is mostly in terms of like e-governance, because I wouldn't say I did work on identity per se, but still like the idea of having this health records shared, but still managing the privacy and the access control and all of that, that could be part of that. Otherwise, for the current work, I'm still like continuing on kind of like discovering or exploring other applications of blockchain in general. So yeah, that's it.
Hello everyone. My English is a little bit rusty. So I'm Smail Iraqi Husseini. I'm an HSSS alumnus from Al Akhawain. My thesis was on privacy. Yeah. So it's been, and my cousin, yeah. So it's been 4 years now that I've been working at the Commission Nationale de Contrôle de la Protection de Données à Caractère Personnel, the National Data Protection Commission. And I have worked through several departments, from data processing, notification management, to citizens relations, through international cooperation, mainly in Africa. And today my contribution will be through the digital identity and the work the Commission has done in contribution to the establishment and deployment of the National Trusted Third Party for Authentication made by the GSN. And thank you for having me again.
Thank you very much, Ismail and all. I will start by Tariq because you gave us a little bit about Waraki, but I'm really, and the audience is really curious about knowing, the benefits related to what digital identity can bring to the citizens of Morocco in terms of access to services. I mean, you know that the land ecosystem, registration and other public services need this digital identity aspects. So I'll give you the floor to elaborate.
All right, thank you. The problem that we see when we're exchanging about e-government services, health, Morocco is unfortunately took some delay or took some time to achieve many things. If you look at our ranking in terms of e-gov, we're not really we're in a good place where we'd like to be. And part of it, the ecosystem as I came to understand it, it's been 18 years now that I've been back. And of course, when I say back with a background, with the luggage, we're in the US, I worked for some fintech, and I saw that, that country is able to provide many services, and it wasn't mainly thanks to IT. It was before IT. It was mainly thanks to a system based on social security, based on unique identifiers. Like in the 70s or 60s, you could walk into a car dealership in the US, and by fax or phone, they could check your credit, and they could identify you with a person over the phone and decide on your credit score and decide whether they're going to give you a loan or not. And then enters the computer era, where these 3 offices were tasked about gathering data about you. But the main idea here is that in a country that I take, for example, in many accomplishments, that system has evolved in the internet era where you could apply for a credit card, you could deal with the government, you could deal with health totally online without having to show up. So having that mechanism, unfortunately, Morocco lacked that. So if we look at today's big projects, we have RSU, we have RNP, we have the National Registry, and these are tenders that, you know, Algo, my company, competed on, and just the environment made things complicated. First of all, what we call l'état civil, civil registry in Morocco. A lot of people don't know that in the 50s, after the independence, it was hard to convince Moroccans to go and register people. You know, we still have, I don't remember the percentage because it's evolving, but we still have some people out in the Atlas Mountains that are running around without national ID, going around without civil registry. So back then, in the 60s, King Hassan had the genius idea of saying, hey, school is free, but if you want to go to school, you need to get your vaccination. That's also free. But if you want to get vaccinated, you need Hala Madani. You need to be registered in the civil registry. And that worked. You know, the challenge is still remaining in many countries around the world, you know, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa. It's still a real challenge. So when people do not adhere to a system, it becomes really hard to put in place a mechanism to identify them. So, like I said, things are progressing. Recently in Morocco, we have, I mean, before going to that, when I say it's complicated, one of the things that are close to my heart is working on the legal framework. I spent 2 years as an administrator and an expert at the National Agency for Digital Development, and I had to resign to not have a conflict of interest with the app that I'm launching, but during my 2 years there, I insisted on changing the laws for public tenders in digital transformation, because the laws that we have are a complete copy of, you know, BTP, of building. You know, when you acquire an IT solution or a digital solution, it's not, I mean, the rough estimates, the government like to have an estimate of what we call a set price, forfeit. So you win a tender, you win a project, and then you sit in front of a client who, like all clients all over the world in digital transformation, IT, they don't know what they want. Their requirements are changing daily, and that's normal. But guess what? You already bid on a fixed price. So you find yourself losing money as a company, and the client is frustrated, so everybody loses. And what we saw, what I'm saying is not only my observation, but it's a real observation that was done that is trackable via data. Many e-government projects failed in the last 20 years in Morocco because of this. So the law needs to change, and it's changing. So going back to identity, the big nice news that we have now in Morocco is that the police, the GSN, is now launching this virtual identity, which in Iraqi, we also have a team in India that we invested a lot of money developing the same thing that the police acquired. And of course, we couldn't deploy it. We finished it in 2017. And when we started, we wanted to test it with the Ministry of Interior. CNDP here objected. And yes. And no, I mean, I have a good experience with CNDP, honestly. And Omar is a, you know, one of the people that supported us. Actually, they weren't here to stop us from innovating and disrupting. No, they were here to make sure that each entity does what they're supposed to do in terms of regulation, in terms of law, and in terms of respecting people's privacy. We are what? We are a startup. We're nobody to manage people's biometric data, okay? The biometrics must be managed by an entity that has that power, you know, and that has the means and the control and all of that to manage the sensitive data. So, like I said, I mean, it's been a 10-year adventure that we learned a lot about in digital identity, and right now we're at a spot where, you know, we're seeing this, we're pivoting. 10 years ago when I had the idea of, I hate muqata'a, I hate bureaucracy, I don't want to ever set my foot in this office. But nobody's doing anything about it, so I'm going to do something about it. So when I run around telling my friends and my colleagues, hey, it is stupid for us to show up in front of someone and sign a document, okay? Much less someone you can corrupt. So how about a machine? A machine can do that. You can't corrupt a machine, so let's do this. So people back then used to tell me, you're crazy. This is sub-economy. It's never going to happen. It's never going to work. And I liked hearing it's never going to work because that was the motivator. So today we're at a good spot. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Tariq. I mean, you make me nostalgic because I lived this sensation like 20 years ago when I was a student and later when I was a professional, when putting the digital kiosks for citizens to pick up their birth certificates and the employees hid them to avoid the citizens. Yeah, they cut cables, they removed the cables, I mean, whatever. I mean, this brings me to, a very good, very important question to both Raifa and Ismail. How can government, you are the representative, sorry, collaborate with researchers into elaborating and more and developing innovative solutions in terms of digital identity? Probably, I leave Raifa start as a researcher, and then we'll shoot the government.
Yeah, so my thought on that is like focusing on this digital identity. So before actually talking about this collaboration, one thing that I have to mention is that it's also important to see if there is any willingness for citizens to actually take part of that. Because imagine like building this whole system and having this whole identity, this whole application, but then people are not actually interested in actually using that. Or maybe if you are facing this digital divide in the sense that people don't have this digital literacy to actually use those applications. So in that case, what I would say perhaps as an institution, for instance, is to sort of like maybe have certain workshops or something that would raise the awareness of like the citizens or the normal people in sense of like how this identity could sort of like make things much more easier for them. Because again, like back to the thing that he mentioned, like if you needed a document, you had to travel all the way to your city where you were born, you had to actually sign in front of someone. So again, if you tell to someone that, okay, we could alleviate that and you can sort of like have a digital document with a digital signature, so it would be much more easier, that's tempting, but at the same time, you have to make them believe that actually that's possible, and also like it's secure and there's no privacy concerns, no breaches that could happen. So that's where I would say perhaps as an institute or educational or something, so it's this education aspect, and also back to collaboration with either the government or maybe private companies. So again, by the end of the day, when you bring people from different expertise, different domains, or maybe, because again, like digital identity, you can see it from this multidisciplinary aspect. Again, there is this cybersecurity from a technical perspective. You want to build this system that is cyber secure, and also it has to respect all the laws that you have, either it's national laws, regulations, and all of that. So I would say that that's where you basically would see the benefit of collaborating with different stakeholders from different domains.
Thank you. So I'm getting used to the feeling of being the only government representatives in events. So I would like to, before answering your question, if you may, to say something about what Mr. Fadli said. So us at the Commission, we have, I'd say, a motto or some more strictly directives when it comes to our relations with the private and the public sectors, especially in terms of digital transformation. We, as regulator, in terms of personal data protection, we are not here to hinder innovation. We are here to help drive innovation in a manner that is respectful of some fundamental human rights, especially that these fundamental human rights is mentioned in our own constitution, so it's only logical that we work and we make sure that things are first developed and deployed in a secure and respectful way. By regards to the role of the national third party developed by the DGSN, I remember very well being in one of their presentations during their launch in November 2022, and one of their arguments was that it was one of their regular prerogatives as entity to manage the ID, the national ID, and make sure that it is digitalized, secure, in a proper and manner way. So this is the first part. But by regards, we can help for academia. As a commission, we are always open to new ideas. We do not have the pretension to say that we know everything. We do not have the pretension to say that we are the only experts in the field. So it is not uncommon for us to receive emails, sometimes even messages on LinkedIn about solicitations. We have this project, we are developing this project, we have this idea, and we need to make sure that it is compliant with the data protection law. We have a process in place for this kind of request, where it can go sometimes up to meetings, several meetings, and we can assist on a one-to-one basis through the process of compliance for this tool. So there is always a way. There is what we need to be looking for, as you said, is always this willingness to achieve, and this I think that fire burning, that there are maybe challenges, there will be obstacles along the way, but we can always make sure that we respect the law. We are a state of law, we have laws, they need to be respected, but again, the process needs to be respected, and if we are solicited, we cannot be everywhere. We are a commission that handles the entire territory. So if we receive requests, we are very happy about it, and I think we have a very young team. I think the average age is around 30. So we have people who are very acquainted with the digital ecosystem. So it's always a great opportunity for us to discover what our co-citizens do in terms of academic research and in terms of innovation. We have put in place working groups. For right now, there are specifics for finance sector and health sector, but we are always open to work on other innovation, can be on privacy enhancing technologies. So as long as we are included, we can be included in the process, we'll be happy to help.
Thank you very much. I mean, since you're talking about data privacy and individuals, I need the perspective of the lawyer here, or the human rights activist. Clarice, can you tell us about how can we ensure that individuals, especially women, are not left behind, and know the implications of a digital identity ecosystem?
Lawyers usually either can simplify things or complicate things. It depends where do you want me to stand. If you want me to tell you the truth, which is also an option for lawyers, I would say that it's a bigger perspective. Digital age or digital identity and all these, big computer science words and themes are embedded in larger context of inequalities. And I think that I was just listening to you, Tariq, and it's fascinating. But the big question that struck my mind was, how do you balance the big tension between progress, which is a concept that is problematic in and of itself, the idea of modernity and all of that. How do you strike a balance between progress, between facilitating life, between simplifying life, and the fact that, as you said, offices will be closed, which means people will lose their jobs, right? And they will not? Great. They will do other things. Okay, that's important, but we tend to forget that at the end of the, every decision or every big decision or any app, there is someone out there that might have or not have an access to that app, right? So that's I think we need to acknowledge the general context where we're talking about, which is not just access to digital identity, it's access, period, right? No, so that's one thing that we need to, and you also mentioned, the government, that you said you might not be able to be everywhere, but yet you are. The question is, the question is, you mentioned, it was exactly, you mentioned, right, just by the example that you gave, age, you talked about age, right, 30 years old. That's another dimension. From a legal perspective, that will give rise to claims about ageism, right? How do we make sure that it's not a trend by younger people that have access to knowledge and have access to access, right? how will my mom, right? Or I will someone from Arabia, we spoke about that, and I'm pretty sure that they are. But these are the questions that we need always to remember, because digital, the larger context is inequality that is perpetuated and further created. So we need to make sure how these concepts are not here to further enlarge them, but rather to bridge them, if we can. Now, so again, going back to your question, this is a very wide question, and I don't think that, you know, many panels will be able to address that question, let alone in a serious way. But suffice to say, just for the purpose of this little panel, that little and important panel, is that we need to approach, I think, I'm not a computer scientist, and I'm in law. I'm trained in the context of law and human rights. But what is been referred to by, for example, I did some research today and yesterday, thanks to your invitation, what the Council of Europe called the human rights approach, right, to AI or to the digital age, or a value-based approach that positions the human, or not just humans, animals or anything around this planet or plants, right, that puts the subjects at the center, and understanding how will any or every app will have, what will be the effect, societal, cultural, political, economic, legal, ethical, and so forth on these people. Now, we need to adopt this value-based approach, this human rights approach. And unfortunately, I've noticed, you know, throughout my professional and personal life, that those human rights approaches sound like almost a foreign language to people from computer science. They're like, oh my God, those human rights lawyers. It's not. It's actually, it's very important language. You'll end up going to court needing to defend yourself in front of a human, unless soon we're going to be replaced by AI judges. I don't know. But I don't know how you're going to corrupt a judge like this, but perhaps it will be a good thing. Huh? Yeah, right. But we need to stop looking at, and I think this is part of the, you know, the liberal art mechanism that's trying also, not always successfully, but trying to ensure that we, oh my God, I'm using a European reference, to create these scholars or graduate that are Renaissance scholars, right? I mean, that they'll be doing computer science, but they will understand the human aspects of their work. We're not detached of that. This is really important, and we tend to forget. The human rights aspects are not just for human rights lawyer with, you know, elite Ivy League graduate resumes like mine. It's important for everyone here. Because we're still part of this ecosystem. Now, so that's one. Second, I think we need to acknowledge the importance of identity. We're talking about digital identity, and we forget that component of the theme, identity in and of itself. Especially as Moroccans, that we're fighting or we are trying to redeem. You know, identity is something that is taken away from you. It's one of the first things to be taken away from you from a colonizing power, and it's one of the first things through which you fight for your self-determination. Identity is important. It has been acknowledged by many and several human rights, not just human rights declarations, universal. It was recognized by international law, universal declarations. We call it personal identity. It's manifested in several rights, like the right to life or the right to education and so forth. But there's also Article 6 of the Declarations of Human Rights also acknowledges the right to legal identity. Now, this is a very important aspect because legal identity assumes that you need to have a citizenship and so forth. And this is also problematic in many of a lot of countries don't have a digital basis or even a system of, of birth and documentation, right? I'm not even talking about digital aspects of that. So legal identity is extremely important. You know, the thing that comes to my mind is Bob Marley's Emancipation, song, Emancipate from Mental Slavery, right? As Moroccans, as people who live in Africa, right? I mean, flash news, Morocco is also in Africa. But we need to remind ourselves, right, that identity, especially striving to redeem ourselves with the legacy of colonialism, where identity has been broken or taken or deprived, smashed, sabotaged, and so forth, that's something that we need to acknowledge first. the notion of identity. Now, digital identity is becoming more and more important because it's becoming also a self-reassuring mechanisms for minorities. Now, into ensuring, it's true, there are important aspects about digital identity. Yes, it can, and the same aspects can be both disadvantages and advantages. It can create access, right? You don't need to wait for half a day for the mukata. You don't need to waste a day. You can actually go to work and not waste your day or not, be deprived of your salary and so forth. It can help people with disabilities. For example, when you go to the mukata and there is no access, right, for people with disabilities. So perhaps that, or perhaps hearing aids, or people with visual impairments and different abilities, that can be very important to them. Also to women. But at the same time, this digital identity can be for the same reasons further perpetuates the inequalities that already exist, right? We're not talking about creating something new. They already exist. They're just manifestation, and they're going to perpetuate what's already there. Who has ability to have purchase or not purchase? Yes, we spoke about that. That's amazing that you will offer, for example, people with suffering from poverty.
Sorry, Clarissa, I will stop you, and then we'll get back to you.
Just to wrap up, it has been acknowledged also by UN Women and other organizations around the world that AI, despite its amazing growth, can be and importance, can also be very detrimental and extremely dangerous. And I'm not talking just as a professor that needs to read all these AI manufactured papers that it takes me 2 seconds to realize. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the real life of people and of women. That will be perhaps your next question to me, how that will affect their life. And we need to acknowledge that. And the barriers that we already have, societal, economic, that have been acknowledged by studies around the world about digital identity. So that's what worries me.
Thank you very much, Clarissa. I mean, I like your thoughts, and they talk to me. But I will jump to Sharafuddin. You are giving us also the perspective of an IT company. And the techies, I mean, the IT company, and how can they provide support to the ecosystem to build like inclusive, digital ID platforms?
Yeah. So let me start by saying I'm a big advocate for making everything digital, and it does indeed save a lot of time, and it helps the citizens, and it provides much better service, faster. However, as someone who spent his entire day fighting cyber criminals and being around cyber criminals to understand every new attack going on and every new method going on, it's a very big concern. Because the moment you move from offline to online, you have a target on your back. And I'm sorry I'm going to mention government and law again. I'm sorry. But
Don't confess.
but we don't have a strict, broad frameworks and laws about cybersecurity. We're new to this. And it's very bad because we have companies over here that try to come up with innovative solutions. But innovative solutions with no law that supports it, it puts everyone at risk. And we see daily at our company, we see millions of credentials and millions of sensitive documents being leaked from secure platforms, but not really secure enough because the laws around it do not really allow for the company to be more innovative, to try better solutions. So for me, I think the best way to correct this is to do a lot of collaborations. The government side of it needs to be available. It needs to be willing to be a part of what I call a triangle. So you have the government that takes care of the policy. You have the private sector that takes care of the innovative part. And then from a cybersecurity perspective, we need independent groups that do the audits and make sure that everything is secure. Because no matter what kind of solutions and what kind of new coding and what kind of layers of security you put in, there is always a way of a hacker to break in, steal the data, and basically ruin an entire country system. So how are we going to achieve the collaboration? How are we going to reach that level? I really hope that in the upcoming years I see the government side being more willing to collaborate, and I see the private side as well. And one more point I want to talk about is, from the private sector point, we need transparency. I am not willing to use a system not knowing how it works. I would not take third-party words for it if I'm going to use it for my own personal data. If I'm using it for my own passports, my credit card, or whatever, I need transparency. I need to know how it works, what kind of security you're using, and who is backing you, which comes to the government that needs to be backed by the government, proved to be secure. You prove to me that you every 2 months, 3 months, you do audits, and you provide this information to the public, because maybe not everyone in Morocco understands cybersecurity, but we are concerned about it. We don't want the dark web to be filled with credit cards and passports from Morocco, because trust me, there is a lot. And it's something we really want to see change, and I think the best way to do it, as I said, is the triangle. Let's collaborate, let's work for the good of this country, and I'm sure we're going to come up with amazing solutions.
Well, I will add to your triangle a square, because we should not leave the academia and researchers away, and I believe that they are at the heart of innovation. And this is why I will jump into Raifa and ask her to talk about research perspective and also the trends in ensuring like blockchain or trending technologies that help.
Okay, so one thing that I also would like to agree on is this aspect of like having this digital identity system that eventually, if we will build, so it has to rely on these audits, because as you said, like even though you try your best, and bear in mind that you have this security by design, privacy by design, no matter how much you try, there's always a way for the attacker to find a way. So audits, respecting some international standards that are out there, and also making sure that it's done from the outside to avoid any biases. And also, like, another important thing is transparency, because one thing that I'm not sure about, yes, working, so is, for instance, like if a breach happened, or like if a company is like, was the target of a breach, so many information was basically disclosed, do they actually announce that? Are they required by law to make people know that actually their data was breached? Or maybe not, so if that's not the case, they have to, so there has to be something that should be done on that. Back on the research aspect, so there are several things that I would say could be perhaps useful. So maybe in terms of like AI, perhaps that could be used. So again, if you are trying to build this system that would manage the IDs of like citizens, so perhaps some intrusion detection with AI, so to kind of like automate this aspect of if someone is trying to hack the system, you would sort of like some prevention, like some mitigation techniques. So again, maybe some incident response with AI, if you could use that. And another aspect, blockchain perhaps, but the thing about blockchain is that, yes, there are many research going on in terms of like what is referred to as this self-sovereign identity model. And that's basically where you give like basically citizens the ownership of their own credentials, and that would be their own ID, and they don't have to disclose that to other service providers. And that's where you would have like a whole lot of like cryptography going on, either zero knowledge proofs or something, where you could basically say, for instance, that I would like to access a service provided by the government or maybe by something else, but I need to have, like, for instance, an age above 18, but I don't want to disclose my actual age exactly. So then there are some techniques that you could use to kind of like let the person know that you do satisfy that requirement without actually providing any more necessary details than you have to actually provide. So back to blockchain. So yes, indeed, in terms of like a self-sovereign identity, that could be used. But here, because we are in a sort of like a framework of like e-government, so again, what could be not controlling, but I would say managing this whole system is the governments, because again, those digital identities would be based on the next generation, at least in Morocco, next generation of IDs that we have, which are equipped with NFC communications, right? So I would assume that, so you have your biometrics NFC, right? Yes, near field communication, right? Yeah. Yes, so basically you have in the card like all your information, including your biometrics. So again, if that's kind of like leaked, there is no way to reverse that, because you can compare the facts of like, if you have a password and that's kind of like leaked somehow, you still have the possibility of changing that password. But if you're actually, your fingerprints are hacked, so are you gonna change your hands? So that's kind of like something critical that we have to consider. So yeah, there are many areas to actually consider. So as I said, AI, a blockchain could be used not for IDs, but maybe for e-government services, perhaps, if you want to kind of like decentralize that. Because again, back to the idea of digital identities. So if you have the government who's going to be managing that system, so you would sort of like have that centralized. And again, you tend to not really lean for centralized systems because they could be easily hacked somehow. So if there is a way to decentralize that, perhaps, if it's applicable, considering like the regulations and all of that, that would be actually great to sort of like think of. So roughly, those are the ideas that I kind of like think of.
Thank you, Raifa. Ismail, can you tell us about,
Right of response.
Yeah, the government is under the spot. Your thoughts about this?
Sometimes I miss AUI.
If you take the U out of AUI, you're left with AI.
Which is not necessarily good. So yeah, by regards to this, I have 2 points. Doctor, you mentioned blockchain, and I would like to mention an initiative, and you mentioned Europe, you don't like to mention Europe, but I'll be mentioning there's an initiative actually in Europe called ADAS 2.0, which I think it's the first framework that recognized blockchain as an infrastructure for identification. And I would also link it with the keynote speaker who mentioned sectoral identifiers, which is another layer of security and privacy. So right now we have our national ID, the CIN, which holds some of the data directly on the card. But we understand that this is our regalian identity, so who we are to the country. But we also have other types of data. We have our health data, we have our insurance data, and we believe that this should not necessarily be linked to our regalian identity, directly to the national ID card. The reason behind is we use a simple analogy. When you go to a restaurant and you order something, you eat, and you pay by card. So mostly, the lawyer is looking at me.
No, just thinking of it in the front, but
yeah. So you so you are paying by card, and the card provider is handling some of the data. So the card provider knows the amount, the bank knows the amount of how much you have paid for that dinner or that lunch, but it doesn't know exactly what you ate. So this is kind of analogy and an argument for sectoral identifiers. If I go to, for example, a bank, I can register with my national ID, so I can identify or authenticate. It's more for an authentication process than identification process with my ID card, but the bank doesn't need to see my medical records. So I think this is where ADAS comes, and I think there is an opportunity to look into it for things we can adopt. During lunch, we had the opportunity to discuss the fact that there are many things to do. Yes, we are lacking many things behind. The data protection law exists since 2009. It is currently in process of updating. But how we see things is that it gives us an opportunity to learn from the initiative that has been done abroad, and to see where it succeeded and where it failed, and learn lessons for both sides. But we always need to keep in mind that for each of us there are local requirements that needs to be taken into consideration during this process. For the National Trusted Third Party, the Commission has been involved since the very beginning of the project, from a compliance perspective with data protection. And tomorrow, I think tomorrow there will be a presentation on data protection law. So there is this principle of that data minimization and proportionality, and the national ID, the system developed strictly respects this principle of data minimization and proportionality. So there is only what needs to be there on the card. Right after that, after the announcement of the deployment of the solution in 2022, the Commission was the very first organization at the national level to adopt the National Trusted Third Party for authentication for its own digital services. And I think everything is... As you mentioned, the square, we need to be all working towards the same goal. We need to make sure that this digital environment or ecosystem we are all involving in, we are also users, we have phone and everything. We need to make sure that we can trust and build trust in the environment we are evolving in. The digital world is nothing but an extension of the real life, so it's only logical that the laws that applied in real life apply on digital world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ismail. Tariq, I mean, we've been talking about multi-stakeholder collaboration, and I really want to understand your perspective on how did you collaborate into making whatever technologies you have developed accepted by governmental institution and being adopted by the government. I mean, I know that this was a war. But,
well, I wouldn't call it a war. I would call it there's a resistance to change. And because this took 10 years, for me personally, I saw the two faces of new people in the government. So I'll give an example of CNDP. Back then when we started dealing with CNDP as one of, I mean, when I say dealing, this is an ecosystem now. You got CNDP, you've got the police, you've got the interior, you have the justice, you have the National Agency for Digital Development, you have the post office that provide electronic signature, you have new actors that do that. You have the digital transition ministry. So we're really talking an ecosystem. This is just on the public side. Now we have banks, Tashilat, Cash Plus. So right now, the ecosystem where Iraqi operates, we're talking about 20 to 30 entities, startups. You know, we've had young startups in different domains calling us and saying, hey, we like your idea. We want to work with you. I'm like, yeah, I can't pay you. I'm kind of financing this. And they're like, no, we want to work for free until it works. So it's really, I mean, if you ask me I discovered this side to the project where you really see when Moroccans want to do something together, there's nothing that stops them. And the proof is COVID, the earthquake. And when we really come together, we're able to do things that really seem hard to come up. So going back to CNDP, we had a meeting in 2016 when this entity didn't have a president. The boss wasn't assigned by the king. And we had our first meeting, and it was the Ministry of Interior, us, and the police. Now, mind you, a startup meeting with the Ministry of Interior and the police at CNDP, that's something that was unheard of 10 years ago. It was just not, I mean, just the DNA of administrations would be like, we can't deal with you. You're a startup or you're private sector. If we don't launch a public tender and you win it, we might go to jail and be in a newspaper. We can't even be friends. That's how scared. I mean, it's not that they don't want to, but they're scared because we're talking money, things like that. So, and mindset, yeah. So just to see the mindset changing. So I remember during the first meeting, the president of CNDP was back then a member of the commission that we met with. And I was really, surprised, pleasantly surprised to see the new mindset. I mean, he sat across the table from me and he asked me a question. This is how we become friends. He goes like, Mr. Fadli, do you work out? Do you do some sports? And I'm like, yeah, I got the midlife crisis. I started doing Ironman. And he's like, that makes sense. I say, why? He's like, because you really need endurance to make this project work. Exactly. And I was like, wow, you're right. Actually, it's this project that pushed me to try Ironman, because the Ironman is easier than this. And he's like, listen, and it was one of the first few rare moments that you see a public official telling you the truth at your face, and you have to deal with it. And it's in a way that we have to do this together. We're not here to tell you, no, you can't do this. We're here to help you do it the right way. And because this is innovation, when we cannot, as the Moroccan administration, when they cannot say yes, they say no. So we're not here to say no, yeah, or inshallah. We're here to tell you it's a great idea. We want it to work. Let us figure out together how to make it work. And to me, that was one of the rare moments in this project where I had satisfying answers. And sure enough, thanks to them, they worked with us. They insisted on having the police accompany us. And once all of that was done technically, the day we asked for CNDP authorization, it took about 30 days, which is a normal delay. And trust me, 30 days is nothing. 30 days is like saying an hour, okay? Because in some instances, when you deal with the other government entities, your authorization could take up to 6 months, a year, or never, and you never get never. So, and when he was appointed a president, and now that I see Ismail as laureate of Akhawain, I remember very well. We met one day for coffee, and he said, "Do you know any good people that want to come work for me? I really need to hire good people. I am done with the mindset of hiring people who settle for a government job. I really need good profiles." And much respect to him, seeing Ismail here sitting. I was like, yeah, Omar made it. So, and actually, you can see it in the quality of their feedbacks and their accompagnement. I'm going to say that in French. So, I mean, I like to explain resistance to change in this way. Morocco is about 12 centuries. Morocco is one of the rare countries on earth. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. How much?
12 centuries of just the
current.
Arab, Muslim
Okay.
civilization.
2,000 years? Is that okay? Okay. 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 So 3,000 years.
So this is something that we need to forget about and to address.
Okay. I stand corrected.
This is identity.
I was just about to say national identity.
Yes, I stand corrected. So I stand corrected. So we're 3,000 years old, right? One of the things that we were able to do as a country is preserve many traditions and many things in culture. Yeah. You see it in our food. You see it in our architecture. You see it in our tradition, our language. You see, this is a force that we have. But that same force also carries a tricky part to it, is that we resist change. Yes. Now, I'm not an expert in history, but I love history. One of the things we did, for instance, when there was the Arab invasion from Middle East, it took them 300 years. 300 years to penetrate Morocco. Why? Because, the Amazigh and the Jews that were here first resisted. It was ideology that won. It was never violence or war that won Morocco. Even the recent colonialism with France and Spain, they really never got to Morocco with weapons. They got to Morocco with, politics and signing conventions. And
religion and
preaching,
yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at this, it makes us people who are very, very tough. We resist change. So the resistance that we saw was never at the managerial level. Like I talked about CNDP and how the president acted. Now I'm going to talk about Interior and other ministries. When you meet a minister, a secretary general, or a director, they listen to you. They are with you. But when you go down to the real field, like you experienced with civil registry in FAS,
imagine I was at that time a woman, a young woman,
yeah,
and a
making
startup.
things worse.
You're still a woman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're still a woman.
Yeah, I am.
So imagine. I could. I could sit here all day telling you anecdotes about the resistance to change, where people go, for instance, in one of the presentations I had in Casablanca, where there was the mayor, the governor, the wali.
All men, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, no, the mayor is a woman. The mayor is a woman. The mayor is a woman now. So, and then you've got, they're all like, yes, let's do this. And then you get the guy, the guy at the bottom of the hierarchy. Somehow he's the only guy who's smart with intelligent questions. And he goes like, oh, they're going to use their IDs? Or what if they lose their IDs and their PIN? And I'm like, do you have a bank card? He's like, yeah. I was like, what if you lose your bank card and the PIN? Who's responsible, the bank or you? And they come up with things just to resist and push this back. I'll tell you something. We did like 1,000 transactions during tests, right? Where Moroccans abroad, download the app and used it. Out of the 1,000 transactions, 25% are Moroccans abroad. They're Moroccans in Canada, Moroccans in France, and they all send us messages in the chat, thank you, this has made it easy. We were supposed to fly to the Moroccan consulate to get this document, and now we did it instantly. Keep up the good work. Then you get fake accounts telling us, who are you to do this? You don't have the right. And then you can't go on social media and tell them, hey, we've been working with the Ministry of Interior and CNDP and DGS. I mean, you can't explain to people publicly, what's going on, and because, you have contracts of confidentiality. And we're not the government. We're operating a solution for the government. It's not our job to communicate. Absolutely. And the government entity to communicate, I mean, this is something that's very, very sensitive. We're talking about 7,000 employees in 2,400 offices. All they do is watch you sign a document. The entire procedure is due to something that not me, Tariq Fadli, who says it, but the World Bank, and we can see it. Unfortunately, we are also badly ranked in what we call societal trust, interpersonal relationships. If you go to the Ministry of Justice in Morocco and dare to ask about the cases we have in court, you will see that this guy against his brother, this guy against his mom, this guy against his wife, and we don't trust each other. And that impacts us at many levels, even doing business. I mean, one of the things I fought for is giving a startup access to government contracts. That's hard for a Moroccan startup to win a public tender because we don't trust you. We're going to trust the SAP, the Microsoft, the Google, but we're not going to trust you. So that key aspect is very important. So resistance to change is here. It's just a component that you have to deal with it. And to answer my friend Clarice, in the US, I learned that IT is for efficiency. It's to eliminate jobs. I came back to Morocco with this mindset. But Morocco teaches you and teaches you quickly. Now we change that mindset. We're inclusive, okay? We have one enemy in our mission for this Iraqi. The only enemy we have are corrupt people and criminals. In our ecosystem, nobody loses. Poor people can use the system for free, okay? People who are willing to pay corruption 50 or 100 dirhams to get VIP service, or even 500 dirhams to have the register travel to your office or your home on a Sunday night, you can pay 20 dirhams, okay? The only people that lose are people who steal identities, okay? Just so you know, Muqata'a committed atrocities in Morocco. Minors, marriage, we had people in many cities in Morocco that marry kids, girls who are 14, 15, 16, because they do a contract at Muqata'a where the dad makes a commitment and gets paid if she gets divorced. We had many atrocities. We have dead people that wake up from their tomb and they go to Muqata'a and they notarize. We travel in time in Morocco. If you have a case in justice and you pay 20,000 dirhams, you can travel to 1994 and notarize the documents. So all of this is our enemy. All of this is done now with our platform. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tariq, for this perspective. And this is, I will ask a question for both Sharafuddin and Clarice, and we'll start with Sharafuddin to close the panel because they are calling for me to start, because we are running out of time. The ethical considerations that are, not ethical consideration, or how can we find the balance between ethical aspects of digitizing our identity or digital identity, but also keeping these digital identities secure for citizens' use.
Yeah, so one of the main things that we just spoke about is blockchain. So if we focus up for purely security, then we need to come up with innovative solutions. We already have blockchain, proven concept. We have AI, proven concept. We have biometrics that we use for authentication. So if we combine the three, and you use the main system as blockchain, so no tampering with the data, nothing, everything is transparent, everything is there, everything is logged, it's safe. Then you have the biometrics for authentication. Then you have the AI for, in case there was a breach, we can use AI for behavioral analysis. So if there is something going on that's not usual, we have a third layer of security that takes care of it.
But how can we make this AI ethically correct, if we can say? I mean, you said behavioral analysis, but who writes or who trains this AI? Isn't it human beings? Isn't it people, researchers? How can we make it or tailor it to our own needs?
Yeah, well, in cybersecurity, it's
and make sure that it brings us the wrong answer, the right answers, and not the wrong ones.
I fully understand, because AI sometimes can be biased. You know,
it is biased mode. It is biased mode.
But in cybersecurity, it's easy to get the data to train the AI with it and to fine tune it to do certain jobs. As long as you have access to a big network that allows you to collect as much data as possible to train your AI to do one job, and one job only, that's to detect anomalies in the user behavior, there will be, of course, I'm not going to say 100% success rate, but the success rate will be higher. So, and another point I will talk about is we need to focus on transparency. Transparency is the key. I need to show me your documents. You know, show me the proof that your system is well set. Your system respects everything. Your system protects my data, and with this we can build trust. With this we can build the future. And if there is no transparency, obviously there is certain things you sign with the government that you don't need to talk about it. But maybe it's the government job to tell the people that here's what we're working on, here's how we're working on it, and then after you work on it, we need cyber awareness. We need to teach people how to use it, and we need to teach people the risk that comes with it as well. We need to be honest, we need to be transparent. And I think if we combine everything with transparency, with new technologies, with good communication from private sector and the government sector, I think we'll achieve great things.
Yeah, thank you. Clarisse?
So I'll just quickly start with what you said about the government needing to teach, or as a human rights lawyer who worked with communities and developed what we call radical lawyering, we should stop thinking about the government and shift the focus to human agency itself. So I don't need the government to explain me things. We need to explain them ourselves. And we need to detach this codependency on the government, you know, and also, you know, coming from a Moroccan perspective, this afak and khnirasna mentality, you know, this is like the idea is that we don't speak or gossip rights, we demand rights. So I think that's something that starts, and we need to shift that. And that's a mindset of demanding rights, not pleading for them. So that's one, the concept of agency. Now, I want to quickly, it's really interesting, Tariq, because when you said that this was one of my points, the mistrust and suspicion, right? I mean, I'm Moroccan too. I wasn't raised here, I was raised somewhere else. But as a Moroccan, I guess it's transnational and trans-border. Speaking of the concept of border and cyber, I guess this is like a cyber mindset in Moroccans. We are trained to be afraid, like, you know, just andak, relax, risk. You're gonna get right? You're gonna get a cold. You're gonna be that. You're gonna be careful all the time, right? And that mindset has very bad manifestation. One of them is being innovative or taking risks. So, and the mistrust. One of the things that I wrote recently in a study about women in Morocco, and women, obviously it's a big category. What is a Moroccan woman in and of itself? It's an intersectional question. You can be Jewish and Amazigh and Arab and Muslim and all of the above and none of the above, right? One of the things is the access to justice, for example, or access to knowledge. And a big issue there is mistrust. Put that also language into this and patronizing people with the use of French and so forth when people don't even speak Darija, they speak a pre-language, which is Tamazight or different variations of these languages. You end up with people that don't trust the system, people that know the system is there, well, bluntly to say bluntly, to screw you or to get arrested for thinking. So how do you... and that is something that can impede the process. We are trained to be suspicious. Now, to put, I asked, for example, when I got to this country, right, it was in the midst of COVID. I was just finishing a fellowship at UPenn, and I needed to come here, but it was COVID, and there were no visas. Well, technically, I couldn't get into a plane. Right? And then I thought, being a lawyer and being, a savvy lawyer, I thought, just a minute, let me do some research. And I realized, my God, I'm Moroccan. I mean, the Constitution says I'm Moroccan. I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Within less than 12 hours, I got a reply because I said, I'm a Moroccan. You need to let me come here. But what's interesting was my conversation with my dad. So, because I remember that my dad we still have livret de famille, right? Whatever that obviously the man has about all the children that he has and the wife that he has taken and all of that, right? I mean, speaking of gender and perpetuating, right? Exactly. So I called him and I said, Papa, do you still have the livret de famille? Instead of saying like, yeah, but what is it for? Right? I mean, that was immediately the question. Exactly, it's Moroccan. What is it for? And I said to him, whoa, right? I called my sister and I said, can you help me on that? So there was a big thing to persuade him, and he's in a different country, he doesn't need that, to take a picture of that. So he can send me, so I can send it to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right? He refused to do that because he immediately in his mind said, it's going to be used, it's going to be stolen, your identity, my Moroccan, be careful, affect, all of these. So you needed to go to do, that person told you go and do some gym stuff. I need a therapist afterwards, right? So this is also because these are very important aspects of being resistant to change. That's something that I wrote earlier, being resistant to change, and especially when that change, kind of intrigues the inner intricates of I don't want to say culture, but intricates of your societal beliefs, right? Which is privacy, and privacy to the extent of exclusion, and survival. Yes, exactly. So this is an important aspect that we need to take into consideration. Now, the biometric, you mentioned biometric. This is not, it's a real thing. India's biometric system had been hacked. Tons of people lost their identities because of that. Identity theft is one of the major things, one of the biggest epidemics in the United States and Canada. In fact, that was something that I was laughing with myself the other day. It's like, wow, at least we're protected here. This is like everything so paper-based, because being trained in the American system, you're always afraid of your credentials. Oh my God, if someone is going to, steal my PIN or steal my social security number and so forth. But I guess, being open also comes with a price. Now, but just
I think we're gonna stop.
But just before that, I think that we need to. When we speak about criminals and cyber criminals, and this is something that we tend to forget too, one of the things that the digital ID system or whatever has allowed, for example, minorities or women, on one end it allowed us a little bit of privacy, right? I mean, we can go incognito, right? Nobody needs to see our picture. We can be, nameless. But at the same time, it's one of the most escalating and growing ways to infringe with women's rights. For example, the case of Amanda Todd, a teenager in Canada that was cyberbullied by a man in the Netherlands, right? Up to the point that she had to commit suicide. Now, I teach this in my international law class because this entire idea of cyber is teasing the concept of borders, it's teasing the concept of jurisdiction, right? Terrorism, act of war. I mean, you can declare an act of war by hacking to someone's computer in a totally different. You can actually, kill someone by a click of your finger today, right? And there will be a drone somewhere in Afghanistan. So these are important aspects. So she committed suicide, and the question there was many questions were brought to court. He was arrested in the Netherlands for other cases too, but the Canadian government wanted him also in Canada, which raised questions of jurisdiction, extradition, and so forth. Many, many fascinating questions about borders and how borders becoming more and more less physical, less geographical, and more virtual. Yet, that virtual is not imaginary. It might be virtual in the sense that we cannot touch it, like crypto or Bitcoin, but it is real in the sense that it affects people's life. So your original question that you posed for me was, how would that affect informed consent of women, for example? Well, that's a big question, because how can I assure informed consent of women online when we disregard the consent of women
in real life?
In real life, right? Yeah. How can I do that? So we need to go and fix those mindsets, those inequalities in the real world, in order to have effect, because what's the problem is the rhetoric upon which all of this is based, not really necessarily this, that, or the other.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clarice. This concludes our panel, but however, I would like to conclude it with a positive note. We are launching with UPenZ Network the Digital Innovation Lab, that will serve as a platform for all stakeholders from different sectors, agency, public sector, private sector, NGOs, and of course the government, to collaborate into creating innovative ideas. When I say multi-stakeholders, but also multidisciplinary, I will invite you, Clarice, to collaborate in our innovation and research projects to bring your perspective. I would like to ask each one of you to give me a positive note in one word, no more than one word, so that we make it short. We will put it later in the lab motto. No, one word, and we will constitute the sentence with the words. Yeah.
The government.
Government.
Because let's face it, they have
the government should set the tone.
So a word or...
Yeah, 2 words. Or 3 words.
It's not a thing, because actually we have a saying. We have a saying in CNDP which comes often. It's if one wants to live digitally, one has to breathe data protection. So I think this is, if it's possible to have a sentence, I would like to keep this one. If it's only one word, I'd say trust, or digital trust.
Okay, excellent.
I was going to say trust, but I have to change it now. So perhaps what I would have to say is awareness, maybe the awareness of the risks that might be coming with this digital identity, but also awareness of how to protect yourself while using those systems, for instance. So awareness for me.
I'll stick with trust. I think I'm going to quote Roosevelt, who said, "Trust but verify." Theodore. Yeah. Trust but verify. So digital gives us the mean to trust and the mean to verify.
So it might be off a little bit, but it's not actually. I'm just thinking about Leonard Cohen, poet and singer and laureate of human rights in many ways. And he has a song called Anthem. And he says this, he said, there is a crack in everything, but it's only through the crack that the lights get in. So that would be it.
Well, everything I wanted to say, they said it already. But, but the most important thing is with collaboration and partnerships, we will go far away. But we need to stick to being transparent. And as long as we have these three things, the future of Morocco's in the technology world is going to be amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for this exciting panel, rich panel. I will invite the audience to ask questions if you have any questions to the panelists. Otherwise, I will invite you to come down for a photo, group photo. Yeah, yes.
Hi, thank you for this discussion, discussion. So I have just one question. We talk about data, or we talk about something that are very confident and private. But here we have a problem. What about the data that have been hacked already? The data that have been taken already? How we can protect them again? Because, for example, because now we know that we have a lot of data that have already hacked or already taken. So how we can protect them?
Yeah, just a quick one. Sharafuddin was talking about the need to have a comprehensive legal framework. I'm much more interested in the enforcement of the legal aspects of cybersecurity. So I was thinking maybe between Sharafuddin and my colleague from the government, if they can reflect on the enforcement aspect of it. The other question is... the other question is, I apologize, I think Professor was talking about ground-up mechanisms to ensure that we protect our data, to make sure that there's an inclusive system. Isn't there a paradox in that space, given the fact that a lot of resources within the government and not much is within the academic space or civil society? How do we balance that aspect of protection and ensuring we have a very sensitive protection mechanisms in place? Last question is to the gentleman in the middle. I apologize, I'm bad with names. Coming to Morocco, I was trying to apply for a visa, e-visa, because I was entitled for it, but the system was not working. Can you fix it? Joke.
All right, so the first question. We know that a lot of data has been hacked. It's too late. I mean, what's been hacked is been hacked, but we cannot fix what we don't know. We need to start by knowing what's been hacked and what is out there in the dark web and in the hacker world. And then after we know what's going on, then maybe we can take certain actions and to take some I don't know, moves to fix what's been left. But other than that, what's been hacked is already been hacked. I agree there is millions of credentials of Moroccans being hacked on a monthly basis, and that's what we're trying to fight in different days every day, and we help organizations and government institutions to detect those hacks and breaches. And yeah, and for the second question, listen, the government should start first, because they need to do strict regulations and laws, because there is multiple companies that get hacked in Morocco, yet they face no consequences. But again, the law is being updated, so we hope that there will be strict rules, and whoever does a mistake will pay for it. I hope so.
So I would like, for the first question, I would not like to be this fatalist. Indeed, the data that has been hacked and published, it is there. Okay, so I'm not sure on the technicalities, but we need to understand that data in itself is not the thing we need to be concerned about, because we need to see the value that that data may hold. This pen doesn't have value to someone who doesn't read, who doesn't write, for example. The data doesn't have value to someone who doesn't care about it. So what we can do is on our best to try to mitigate the risks that come from data breaches, data violation, to prevent that data be used later on in doxing, in cyber harassment, in tracking, in identity theft. So we need to be aware, and this is where the human factor and the human agency comes. Who's responsible of the data breach if I gave my data to an entity that doesn't provide the right safeguards to that data? Is it really the company, that entity, or is it me for not doing my due diligence? And I think this is a concept that I personally advocate for, especially today that we are, I guess, one vocal away from information. Always do your due diligence in anything you do in life in general, because this is going to be helping in everything. And today, information is accessible. Research papers are there. Everything is available on the net. So this is for the part I'm trying to be a little bit less pessimistic by regards to the data. For enforcement, I can only speak from what I know, and I can only speak from the current status of things. So us at the Commission, we always uphold an approach of to resolve things à l'amiable, in a friendly way, as a first approach to things. We firmly believe that there is still a lack of awareness, but we do not endorse the lack of good willingness. We do a strict difference between the two. If there is good willingness, if there is good faith in what we do, then we can always find a way, and of course every case is to be studied independently. I'm not generating the case. But if there is not good faith, there is not willingness to respect the law, then there is a process for it to go to the public prosecutor, and it can go, there is the law upholds sanctions, it can be financial, it can be up to prison for, in some cases, in terms of non-compliance or uncooperativeness. So the law is very clear about it, and no one, they say that no one should ignore the law, and even more today that everything is accessible. So enforcement will, we have communicated about this several times, that there will be a time where in Morocco sanctions will come in terms of non-compliance for data protection law. So people should not, or organizations in general should not be surprised when this time finally comes, and the law will be enforced in a public way, because it is enforced really through our work in authorizing data processing, through our work in managing data subjects complaints. We receive hundreds and hundreds of complaints per month by regards to data protection rights exercise, and this goes unnoticed because our work, we believe that the best work is done, our work is done when the data subject or the citizen or the person is happy for the service we have provided. Because we as a public administration, our main source of existence is to serve the citizen first and foremost. So if the citizen is happy, we are not necessarily obliged behind to say, look, we did our job. This is not constructive. So I hope I brought you a little bit of insights. Thank you.
So to answer quickly your question, this goes back to what I was saying about the regulation for public tenders in IT. Also, going back to resistant to change, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is one of my clients. I work with them. Very proud to have them as clients. They are a sensitive entity where data is very sensitive. One of the systems we did for them is diplomatic management system, like diplomats who are here and diplomats who are abroad. I mean, we had near-death incidents where, you know, as a country where you have diplomatic ties to other countries, sometimes you can have a country that's an enemy with another country, but both consulates are in your territory. And if you give digitized system and data gets shared the wrong way, you can cause a diplomatic incident between two other countries just by a simple fact. I mean, that's just an example, one that we nearly lived that's very dangerous. But the problem with public tenders, we have two things. First, trust. There is a ministry I shall not name that has 120 IT engineers. When you hire 120 IT engineers, you're not the Ministry of X. You're the Ministry of IT, okay? So each should focus on their strengths. And this reminds me of one of my mentors that says, forget your weaknesses, focus on your strengths. So the strength of government entities is doing their job. It's not doing IT. In IT, there's an ecosystem, you know. There's companies that do that every day. You know, companies that do software development, companies that do support, companies that do security, companies that do cloud, hosting. Just the cloud is an issue. A lot of ministries, they still have this mindset that they don't want to go to the cloud. They'd rather buy servers and do it. It's expensive, it's risky, you know, it's a lot of things. We're still, that mindset is, in my estimation, about 20 years late. So the answer to that it's not working is what I mean, this is my opinion, this is not someone else's opinion. My formula to make eGov solutions work is not my idea. I mean, it works in other countries, is invite the public, the private sector in, but this time, the way to do it is to build a semi-public, semi-private entities using PPP. That's the project that I'm trying to pass with CDG and the post office and us. I created La Marocaine de e-service, and I invited the government to invest in it and operate. For instance, Waraqi, we're not selling it to government. I refused to sell it. We had offers. The post office wanted to buy it. A bank wanted to buy it. CDG wants to buy it. I say no. Maybe I'm stupid. I should just take a check and go. But if I do that, it's the best way to kill the project because it needs to be operated with a startup mindset, with agility. The government closes office at 4 p.m. The solution is 24 hours, okay? So it needs a different mindset than a government agency. And to do that, you need a formula. The formula is easy. We don't go into public tenders because they're risky and they're lengthy. So let's find a formula where Waraqi is for free for the government. We get paid per transaction by users. That money goes into this semi-public entity, and this entity, all it does is it develops for the government without work orders, without public tenders, without deadlines. When I say we did the COVID system in 3 weeks in Morocco, you know why it works in 3 weeks? It's because we had no administrative constraints. I didn't need someone to sign a PV that they accepted the specs for my engineers to start development. We closed the call at 4 a.m., the developers started at 8 a.m., and we did it in 3 weeks. Imagine if that platform was a project that the Moroccan government was going to pay for. It would have taken a year to start. It took 24 hours. I met the minister on March 17th. We started working on March 18th. If it was a project, it would have been 1 year to draft the CPS, to launch the public tender, to decide who's going to win it, and whoever wins it is going to struggle. Oh, this wasn't written in the RFP. So this is the winning formula, in my opinion, is to build an entity that invites startups, invite the private sector and the public sector, but monetize on its own and finance everybody else. Something else is important. With the ADD, the National Agency for Digital Development, they struggle a lot because each CIO at a government entity, I call them kings, okay? In Morocco, we have one king, but I call them kings because they want their independence. They want to rule their IT kingdom. They want to keep relationship with suppliers. They want to keep doing their way. You cannot change their mindset. Instead, you can use an entity like CDG and ADD to say, okay, do your thing, develop, buy servers, live your life. But guess what? Now we have this entity that has a mission to make sure that all services of the government are instantly available. So do your thing, develop your, it's like Glovo. The example I give them is Glovo or McDonald's. So see McDonald's, you have the drive-through, you have You know, the guy in front of you, you have the app of McDonald's, and then you have Glovo. Which one works more? It's Glovo. So, there you go.
Thank you very much, Tarek. I will invite the audience to come down. We will have a picture, a group picture with the panelists.
برافو الله يعطيكم الصحة.
Merci.